Alright, my darlings. Well, after the last two episodes' ventures into parts unknown for me, I think it's about time I get back to some familiar ground, and in particular take a look at one of my favourite shows from the glory days of CBBC. And with the recent and tragic passing of one of the show's stars, I think it was about time to talk about it. Chucklevision. The Chuckle brothers are, or were I guess now, Paul and Barry Elliott, a brotherly comedy duo act from Rotherham who take big inspiration from Laurel and Hardy, with the older but smaller brother Barry being the very subdued and passive of the two, whereas the younger brother Paul takes charge of the situation but often winds up having the two neck deep in trouble as a result. The pair got their start in the late 60s and early 70s with frequent appearances on game shows and variety shows doing various vaudeville acts, and then they got their start in kids shows with the silent comedy show Chucklehounds in 1985, which clearly showed off their golden age of Hollywood comedy inspiration, and a very successful game show by the name of To Me to You, which was a reference to their most famous catchphrase.
To you!
To me! To you!
To you? No, not to you, Barry, to him.
Give him the order.
I'm under your command. Please give me an order. From you to me.
But they really hit gold with their sitcom Chucklevision, a series that started in 1987 and ran for an impressive 22 years, with the final series airing in 2009, making it one of the longest running shows in the CBBC portfolio alongside Grange Hill and Blue Peter, and with the Chuckles themselves being one of the most beloved CBBC regulars, all the way up until last month where Barry tragically passed away. Rest in peace, buddy. The show was very much like a modern kid-oriented Laurel and Hardy, with a little bit of the Marx Brothers in there as well, with the boys getting involved in harebrained scenarios, either due to Paul's ambitious goals of trying to become an inventor or a businessman, or just because of whatever job they had that week. All of which resulted in basic and enjoyable hijinks, with Barry often making wry comments or a witty one-liner.
They've done the van retirement home.
No wonder people are working longer.
And their actions often at the behest of the recurring characters No Slacking and Mr. Get Out of It.
And no slacking. Get out of it.
And that's not lazy research or writing on my part, that's literally how the characters were credited. Who were played by the pair's real-life half-brothers Jimmy and Brian Patton, who also started off with the two in their first appearances, all of which culminated in a show that, while a bit quaint and dull to some, for me this was one of my personal favourite shows to watch as a kid, and given that it always aired right before Dick and Dom and right after Farthingwood and Looney Tunes, that just made my Saturday and Sunday mornings, and whenever I see a pedal golf cart, I always think of this show. Not that you really see them anymore, the last time I saw some was on Ontario Island in Canada. Alongside some other interesting things if you cycle up to the nudist part of the island. Much like Dick and Dom, while on the surface it looks like an attempt to put as little effort into a kids show as possible, through a mixture of hard work from the four brothers, a quaint down-to-earth feel, even amongst the insane and often outlandish scenarios, and some legitimately clever and funny writing, this is a show that proves that even with the bare minimum, you can make something brilliant. Which is what I pray people think of Deadweight. But with 22 years and over 200 episodes of this show, there's way too much to cover with just a basic overview, so I'm going into the best episodes of the series, but with this many, 10 just won't cut it. So we're going into a top 20 of the best episodes, and due to that we don't have any time to waste, so let's dive right in. The top 20 Chucklevision episodes. Also, disclaimer here, much like my Dick and Dom review, the series I'm talking about has only started just being released on DVD, so the quality of these clips isn't going to be great. They've gotten up to series 3 so far, but well, they've still got another 17 to go, so it's the best I can do, I'm afraid. Also, with 20 episodes to get through in one video, the recaps are going to be a bit more condensed than normal. So with that said, let's get started. Number 20. Market Forces. This is one of the oldest but best episodes, and one of the ones that defined the formula which would continue for the rest of the series, as the first two series were more like a Basil Brush style of meta-humour involving making a TV series, hence where the name Chucklevision comes from, though most of the episodes focus more on this guy and a segment called Armchair Theatre rather than the Chuckles themselves. If he's such a big deal, why isn't the show named after him? Barry and Paul set up a market stall. Hey, that rhymed. But Paul gets annoyed with Barry, so he tells him to go away from his clock stall.
I know, but...
No, mind no, so go on, will you? Home. Go on, don't slink like that, just get off home. Told you!
But then Barry comes back to set up a joke store right next door to his, and then they live up to the title by competing against each other on who can sell the most from their respective stalls. The great thing about this episode is how it shows more conflict between the brothers than it did previously, and gave a greater establishment of how Barry's more innocent, self-aware and logical personality plays off of Paul's more ambitious and imaginative, but lazy and selfish personality. And it also goes to show off how much the boys are capable of with just themselves and a couple of props.
What's this here? How to keep an idiot interested for hours. Please turn over. How to keep an idiot interested for hours. Please turn over. How to keep an idiot interested for hours. Please turn over. Should take that back if I were you, Barry.
Especially those mouse traps.
I'm glad you got rid of those mouse traps.
All except one. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Oh!
I found it.
A simple episode, but a classic none the same. Number 19. Power play. During the years when the boys used to live in a converted mill, they're having some power problems, and so Paul, being the ambitious inventor that he is, tries to figure out a way the two can become completely self-reliant on their own self-generated power. He tries various methods of doing that, such as nuclear power, hydropower, and even wind power, all while having to deal with no slacking as an Air Force captain, and the cat, Mr. Battersby, that Barry is looking after, which isn't particularly tame.
It's Mr. Battersby. Grab him before he gets soapy.
Naturally, as any person who tries using alternative energy providers finds out, making your own form of power is pretty hard, but let's just be thankful that Paul never did manage to get his hands on some nuclear material. All I can imagine is the super mutants from Fallout having the faces of the Chuckles, which might then make that game scarier than Silent Hill.
Hello!
Try getting that out of your heads tonight. All of which results in some clean, fun antics, which culminates in a hilarious punchline twist at the end of the episode.
Well, I've got to hand it to you, Barry. Who would have thought it, eh? So much current from a lemon.
It's amazing what you can pick up at the fertiliser factory.
Number 18. Caravan capers. For the first few series, the setups for episodes were often derived from where the boys were living. In between series 6 and 7, they lived in the mill, as I mentioned earlier, which gave them lots of work opportunities. But the first consistent dwelling was a caravan, which, if you've seen Carry On Camping, you'll know is a prime place for comedy. But thankfully with less of this.
In and flee!
Also, to me, the opening shot of the episode perfectly sums up the way Paul would treat Barry throughout most of the series.
It's raining again.
Is it?
Also, any man who can pull a caravan along with just pedal power is a bloomin' stallion. Top Gear can vouch for how even a car struggles with towing a caravan, but just one very skinny man? Guess perhaps he did get some interaction with some nuclear material, because that is some super mutant level strength right there. This episode is basically just the same caravan jokes you've seen in the past, but they're always a treat to watch, because anyone who's ever spent a weekend in a caravan knows how much of a nightmare it is. Heck, even just getting it out of a garage is a pain in the ass. Give it some. Number 17. Chuck Bodgers. Occasionally in some of the later teen-numbered series, the Chuckles would find themselves in the time of the French Revolution for the Purple Pimple episodes, which were basically a spoof of classic adventure novels like Zorro and the Scarlet Pimpernel. But in Series 18, they decided to go a different direction by using the same cast and crew as those episodes, but making it more of a stand-up of classic 1930s and 50s sci-fi serials. The brothers' descendants are pizza delivery men from the far-off future of 2025, but due to a misunderstanding end up freezing themselves and the greatest hero in the galaxy, Troy Wiz. The three then team up with the President of Earth, Madame LeBlanc, no, not that one, and stop the evil Ping the Pitiless. But sadly, Brian Blessed is nowhere to be found in this episode.
Gordon's alive?
As you can imagine from the premise, it's a tongue-in-cheek spoof of old sci-fi serials like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. But while this did come at a point where the series was starting to lose steam, and it still had the same non-existent budget as always, they really put as much effort as they could into this to make it as funny as possible, such as Barry's mocking of Ping, which to be fair with a name like that it's not hard, the use of the immobilizer ray, a Deadpool-style teleportation belt, a nice little gag about Rotherham United, as per usual.
We've been out of it for about 300 years or so, and we were wondering if you could tell us Did Rotherham United ever make the Premiership?
Don't be so foolish.
And even a reference to the old Purple Pimple episodes.
Was it the Purple Pimple who once said, "If you can keep your head when all about you lose their..."
Kipling.
Who's that Kipling?
It was Kipling who said it.
Whether it's the past, present, or future, these guys can always get themselves into trouble. Number 16. Oddball inventors. Paul's always fancied himself an amateur inventor, and this is the episode that explores that concept the most in the early series. Paul secluded himself away to work on some gadgets that he's hoping will make him rich.
Didn't you see the signs?
Well, the first one said, no entry without permission. And the second one said, definitely no entry without permission.
So what are you doing here?
I came to ask you permission.
After showing off some of his efforts to Barry, including sneaking in a very timely reference.
Do you like Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles?
Yeah, brilliant.
I told you that's what they used to call the show in the UK, but no one believed me. The pair then set out to show off and sell their inventions to the everyday public, with about as much success as you would think. Get used to hearing that phrase in this video. Much like Wallace and Gromit, the inventions are rather overdone to do even the simplest things, but I doubt Wallace ever made a lawnmower powered by a goat.
Oh! Don't let the goat escape! Don't let the environmentally friendly engine escape.
Oh, so that's why electric cars aren't that fast. Maybe Tesla need to upgrade their engines, perhaps to a pig. Or a donkey. Though in fairness, that washing line bike thing they made is actually quite a good idea. I can't think why anybody hasn't made one yet.
And when you think it's dry enough, you simply apply the brakes. Like so.
Whoa!
Oh dear.
Ah, perhaps that's why.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Oh dear, 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 oh dear.
Edison once said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. With these guys, it's more like 1% perspiration and 99% moustache. Number 15. Movie moguls. While the movie in question never really gets started, it's always nice to see the lads try and set up something ambitious and have it backfire massively. Even more so with the Kevin Costner Robin Hood standee they have in the background there. Early 90s and Kevin Costner, that's like adding a flame to a petrol station. Barry and Paul head along to a friend's bingo hall to look after it while he's away, but then get the idea to turn it into a theatre. One of the highlights in this episode is Paul trolling Barry with the curtain and the projector, Barry dressing up like a member of the Lonely Hearts Club band, and Paul turning film editor and making his own movie, which by the sound of the title and Barry's description, it sounded awesome.
Godzilla meets Rocky 4 at the Temple of Doom.
Anyway, the film was running backwards. Godzilla was sucking fire and Rocky IV was punching himself.
Who really wants to see a Godzilla, Rocky and Indiana Jones shared universe now? I mean, it's bound to be a better success than some of the other movie shared universe projects that are going on right now. Plus, like a lot of early Chucklevision episodes, Paul and Barry seem to be the Omega Men since there's no one else in this world except them, though this might just be more fuel to my fire of the theory of them being mutants and the world around them got nuked long ago. Hey, it may be dark, but that's my kind of thing.
People say I've got the look of a star about me.
They're right, Pluto.
Big screen or little screen, either way, these two can always entertain us. Number 14. Shipwrecked. Seems that even on a desert island the boys end up being a nuisance to somebody, since even in a blot in the middle of the sea, they still ruin somebody's day. After sinking their friend, and frequently mentioned but never seen supporting character, Dan the Van's private yacht, the boys end up on a desert island and try to make the best of their situation, while being stalked by what looks like a cross between Ben from Treasure Island and a Welsh sheep-based version of Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. I think what makes me love this episode so much is just the relaxing feel it has to the whole thing. All of the episodes of Chucklevision of this era have that feel due to the aforementioned lack of any other people around and the lovely music.
Stop!
But being in a tropical paradise that's mostly overcast most of the time, but still better weather than you'll get in most beaches in the UK, does make the whole episode feel very laid back, even more so than usual, which makes this the perfect episode to watch on a lazy summer day. as I often did when I was younger. Also, the fact that the Chuckles keep up their sense of optimism no matter where they are, even a desert island, it's really quite endearing, and I think it's one of the things that made the two so likeable. Also, any show that has a joke where a note in a bottle has a menu to a Chinese restaurant is one where the writers were clearly having too much fun when they were doing their job.
What is it?
It's a menu from the Chinese chippy. Chicken, fried rice and egg fondue. Sorry, half-day closing.
That's the trouble with Chinese food. You don't get one, and half an hour later, you feel like not getting another one.
And thankfully without as much racism as when they went to a Japanese restaurant a few years later.
Hockey mocky tin tan choo. Hockey mocky tin tan choo. Hockey mocky, hockey mocky, hockey mocky, hockey mocky, hockey mocky tin tan choo.
Either way, I'd much rather be stuck on a desert island with these two than Richie and Eddie.
Trees. Bamboo. Oh God, I'm bored.
Number 13. Outward Bounders. The pair are on an outside survival trek, as sponsored by Dan the Van himself, and all the while having to compete against what looks like Corporal Jones after being promoted in Dad's army, and Private Pike after going on a massive binge after the war ended. Unlike Shipwrecked, this episode is high tension all the way, but in the Chuckles laid-back fashion, with the pair competing against Jones and Pike, and these rejects from the Tory party who disappear after the beginning of the episode. I wonder where they got to. One of the other reasons I like this episode now is that as a former film student, I know how hard it is to film in the woods, and even though Chucklevision is never going to win a BAFTA for cinematography, though they have won and been nominated for other BAFTAs, and I'm not joking, even filming something this simple is made a whole lot harder when you add the woods into it, so bravo for that. Plus it's nice to have some other antagonists for the boys to go up against for a change, which would become a much more prevalent theme in later episodes. Also, Paul's way of navigating makes me wonder if he's the guy who invented the first sat-navs.
And we need to be here. And the quickest way between 2 points is a straight line.
Correct.
Fine. Follow me.
Hey, what about the map?
I don't need that. I know exactly where I'm going.
A great example of how the two are capable of comedy and mayhem outside as much as they are inside. Number 12. Hijinks. In quite the contrast from the last episode, this one shows that even in a very confined and not very exciting environment, you can still have great comedy with these two. The pair are now stewards on an airliner, and as you'd expect, not very good ones, which takes a drastic turn when they arrest the pilot, mistaking him for a stowaway, and locking the co-pilot in a closet.
Captain Smythe! Captain?
This door must be kept locked at all times. Right.
Which, along with the episode Airline Antics, spawned hundreds of internet jokes about the Chuckles being plane hijackers. Again, not joking, the internet can come up with some sick jokes. Not that I'm one to talk. Though to be fair, any stewards who see a guy dressed up as a 1970s flasher and don't think he's the stowaway clearly have their minds in other places. Or maybe he's on his way to a con and he's cosplaying as McGruff the crime dog. Much like Caravan capers, it shows how much can be done with such a simple premise in a small filming environment, from the boys having to pilot the planes themselves, projecting the in-flight movie upside down, and doing the one thing that everyone wants to do on a flight. Pull the cord.
To inflate the life raft, but please don't do this until you're outside the aeroplane, you pull this rope.
Like this.
No!
Come on, we've all wanted to do that on a flight. We get bored enough to want to try it. That or kicking the side of the plane to make the oxygen mask fall down. Or is that just me? No wonder they don't let me on flights anymore. Number 11. Cousins at War. One of the best parts of watching the show was the duo showing off their surprisingly versatile acting abilities, particularly Barry, who was a very good actor, and this episode is one of the best examples of that. The pair have challenged their rich, ennobled cousins Harry and Saul to a golf game over the fate of their respective vehicles, Harry's Rolls Royce and the Chuckles' iconic Chuckmobile. Wacky Caddyshack hijinks ensue, and while in terms of a golf-based comedy, the episode Goofy Golfers is a better episode, I prefer this one just for the pair being able to play their polar opposites.
Hello?
It's uncanny. They look more like us every time I see them.
No, they don't. If I look like that, I'd seriously consider having plastic surgery.
As Harry is an egotistical, self-centered, cheating upper-class snob, and Saul is a very kind, friendly, and almost oblivious man.
So pleased to see you again. Jolly decent of you to pop round.
Likewise, I'm sure.
What do you think you're doing?
I'm saying hello. It's been a long time.
Exactly 12 months tomorrow.
Oh, yes. The day I beat you 7,000-0 at tennis. Shouldn't that be love? Not in this case, no.
Also, this episode introduced a really bizarre plot point that whenever Barry eats a pickled onion, it causes a small earthquake. And also Saul's fish squirting water whenever they eat them.
Will you stop eating them pickles?
Do they like pickled onions?
Oh, they love them.
Though to be fair, I create a gale force hurricane every time I eat eggs. Thankfully, this wasn't the last episode where the pair would play alternate versions of themselves, but I had to include this one just for Barry's brilliant performance, though sadly this was one of the many episodes to suffer from lots of cuts when the running time of the episodes was changed from 20 minutes to 15, so a lot of his great performance was sadly cut. Either way, even with a reduced episode runtime, it's still an episode worth watching, if only for the punchline at the end of the episode.
Your roller, I believe.
But
we've been trying to get rid of it for months.
I think we've now seen how most game shows loophole their contestants out of giving them prizes, much like how when I won Catchphrase I was promised a new bike, and all I got was this. Number 10. The Good, the Bad, and the Chuckles. That title really says it all, and for a no-budget show, the production values are surprisingly high on this episode, with some damn good accents as well.
You better pray you got yourself a lucky star, Sheriff. 'Cause you're sure gonna need one when you meet me tomorrow. And I know.
The Chuckles are sent to the American twin town of Rotherham, Ridge, but it seems that this town is even more outdated than Rotherham as it's still in the days of the Wild West, and Barry ends up annoying the outlaw Big Jake, who just so happens to hate the sheriff, which Paul's taken over the job of. That is until he quickly switches lanes and gives the job to Barry, so he will have to face off against Jake after they inadvertently ruined his treasure map. Following in the proud footsteps of Zap Brannigan, and possibly Donald Trump near the end of his presidency. Chris, you're the president now. I'm off to my golden shower tower. You have fun with all those missiles coming towards the White House. Bye. As I said before, for a show that had to make do with whatever the producer could spare from his shed to make the show, the production value and the sets of this episode are pretty top notch, and it wouldn't surprise me if this was the same place that they filmed the Red Dwarf episode The Gunman of the Apocalypse, because it does look very similar. And the acting's pretty good too, though surprisingly it usually is in Chucklevision. You'll rarely see a bad performance in the show. That is if you keep watching it before you get to Series 18. Clint Eastwood may have found the grave with no name, John Wayne may have found Matty Dad's killer, and Lee Van Cleef may have returned the Golden Ninja Warrior, but these two are the true legends of the West. Number 9. Muckadoo About Nuttin'. While not the most engaging episode in the series, and has a bit of a bizarre premise about Barry and Paul running away from a gangster because of an incident with some coffee, this episode highlights Barry's transformative acting ability to the best, with the best character he's played in the whole series, Arrivederci. With the exception of possibly his Flint Steele character from the episode Double Trouble, but I thought it'd be nice to show the later series some love. While it's never explained why Barry has an Italian gangster stereotype doppelganger, and an American film star doppelganger as well.
Hey, don't talk to me about energy. Tell this clown. I've seen more energy than a 40-watt light bulb.
Hey now.
And while he's not in the episode that much, this is by far his best performance in the series, with a very entertaining and in some points even genuinely intimidating mob boss character.
This is not the way I do business. If they throw coffee at you, they throw coffee at me.
Who puts the boys on the run, which is what takes up most of the episode. And while the little cat and mouse escapades aren't bad, it's nothing too special. But I just love watching this episode for Barry's performance.
It makes the best coffee in the world. Now nobody makes better coffee than Barry Arrivederci.
Number 8. Cross-country Chuckles. While episodes where the boys are separated for the majority of the episode and are on their own don't always go well, this one certainly does, even though it's mostly just a non-sequitur series of sketches with the individual brothers, which kind of describes this series in a nutshell, really. Regardless, the thing that makes this episode so enjoyable is how it's a testament to how much of a jerk Paul can be to Barry.
Paul, how would you like to take another route?
Does this other route make it a lot easier than going over that great big hill?
Oh, yes.
And does it mean that I'll beat Brother Barry?
Well, I think so.
then I think I like it very much indeed. It's not cheating, is it?
Cheating's a nasty word. Let's call it ingenuity.
The pair go on a fun run, and Barry challenges Paul to see which one of them can win first, with Paul noisily confident that it'll be him, of course.
When I won this, you got to greet me every morning with a slice of toast and a cup of tea.
I might win.
If you win this, I'll eat my sweatband.
Wow.
But the whole time it seems that Barry is the better of the two, so Paul tries to undermine his efforts every time they cross paths. That is, when he's not cheating. Not that it works for him anyway.
How did he get there? He should be hopelessly lost.
Of course, it looks like Paul's going to win at the end, but then the karmic retributions of his actions come to a head.
Don't relent, Paul. You got your sweatband to eat for dinner.
To be fair, it's better than most meals you can get at a restaurant in Rotherham. Number 7. Alien Antics. The last few series really started to lose steam. Every episode felt like it was really phoned in, and the setups were just getting insane and really nonsensical, even for Chucklevision. I mean, when you're 18 series in, you've kind of done everything you can possibly do in the series. But there were a few good episodes, and one of the best was Alien Antics. The Chuckles did encounter aliens before in the episode Spaced Out, but it was more implied, and we never saw anything explicitly intergalactic. And they've been into space in an episode I'll mention later, but here we get to see an alien played by Goomba and former Oompa Loompa himself, Rusty Goff, who actually appeared quite a few times in the later series, even though the alien in question does look like a mutated sack of potatoes wearing a Poundland alien mask. That, or possibly the result if Golem caught both dropsy and eczema. Seriously, what is that suit supposed to be? It looks like it was lining the floor of a dog's toilet before Rusty put it on. But the reason I like this episode so much is because it's hilarious to hear Paul's high-pitched voice dubbed over the alien when he and the alien get their brains switched.
What have you done to me? I want me back!
Wyatt, you will obey me. Silence.
Come on then.
No, I can't go back looking like this. People will laugh at me.
They do anyway.
That and the alien's funnier than you might think he is, thinking that tomatoes are human beings, and of course this line.
Sorry, I don't speak Welsh.
Always a classic. Sorry, Welshie. Also by how the effects and the set designs are so awful, even the show doesn't care about them anymore. They even make a joke about this when Paul as the alien pretends to be the commander on the monitor of the ship.
Wait. The reception seems remarkably good.
I've just been giving the screen a quick polish. Keep your mucky fingers off it, Paul.
I didn't touch it.
But let's just be thankful that the aliens didn't want to do any probing. Number 6. The Return of the Purple Pimple. The Purple Pimple episodes were some of the best and most ambitious in the show's run, as I mentioned earlier. But which ones were truly the best? Well, the original 3-parter is a classic, with some great jokes, and great performances by the new cast members, especially Barry Killerby, who plays Robespierre, but part 1 really drags, and part 2 almost seems pointless to the grand plot. Part 3 was good though, and the third time the Purple Pimple appeared just felt like a bunch of meandering. And Smugglers was a good episode, but it seemed a bit out of place in the grand narrative. The second time, however, is by far the best, with tons of action, jokes and adventure throughout, and all contained in one episode. Sir Percy, the secret identity of the aristocratic saviour the Purple Pimple, is captured in France by his nemesis, Citizen Robespierre. So it's up to the Chuckles and Sir Percy's fiancée, the Countess of Paris, to save him. As I said of the Purple Pimple episodes, this one is by far the best out of all of them, with the best action, comedy and story, and it's all contained within 15 minutes. That's pretty impressive. Plus some references to the Man in the Iron Mask doesn't hurt either.
It is your turn to wear the Iron Mask. What have you to say to that?
Have you got it in blue?
Plus that great image of Paul and Barry brandishing a sword in a cow outfit makes this whole episode worth it.
Come on, messieurs. Make my day.
That and Robespierre bringing out a mobile phone inexplicably.
Excusez-moi. That is the most intriguing device. I think so. One day everyone will have one.
The sad thing is that this was meant to be an ironic joke to make the episode seem more modern. Yet using an old mobile phone model like that still makes this episode outdated. Although Tony Stark has shown us that flip phones seem to be coming back into style, so maybe they were ahead of their time. Either way, this is still better than the second Zorro movie. Number 5. Up in the Air. One of the most iconic episodes in the series, if just by the fact that they keep showing a clip of it in the intro over and over again. Paul wants to set up his own airline, but decides to forego the cost and hassle of airplanes and decides to opt for hot air balloons instead. And from there, well, 2 men disaster alert in the air on a hot air balloon. It's basically what you'd expect it to be. Paul and Barry falling out of the bassinet and giving us that iconic shot of them hanging over the edge, Barry jumping up and down on the top of the balloon, even that bit in the beginning where Barry gets carried away with the balloons and Paul uses rock cakes to get him down.
These rock cakes are lying a bit heavy, Paul.
Though I'm surprised that that mullet of his didn't weigh him down. You could tell this was the 90s. Despite the fact that it's clear that it's just 2 men messing about in front of a green screen, it's still a lot of fun to watch, though with the exception of this shot.
Oh no! We're losing height!
I doubt that they were more than a few feet off the ground for most of it. Though to be fair, that's still higher than a lot of budget airlines go nowadays. Up in the air or down on the ground, these 2 get into trouble no matter what plane they're on. It's just a shame we never got to see an episode where they were getting into trouble under the sea. Number 4. Dear Diary. A more down-to-earth and sombre episode, but an effective one none the same. Barry's been getting flying lessons to take Paul out on a biplane for his birthday, while he's been keeping a diary of the events, writing how the plane he's been practicing in has been falling apart and may need to be scrapped. Paul finds his diary and gets cross-wired in thinking that something bad is going to happen to Barry soon. So in a change from the norm, tries his hardest to make Barry feel as comfortable as possible. Barry then finds Paul's diary where he's written about this event and he gets cross-wired, and well, you can see where it goes from there. This episode shows some of the best writing of the whole show, with a lot of dramatic irony that lays itself so thoroughly. It's less of a kids show and it starts to feel more like a complex drama. Well, more like a melodramatic soap opera, though to be fair, they were still more fun than the actual kid-oriented soap operas of the time. There's also some really ambitious shots involving planes that I'm sure isn't all stock footage, which culminates in a brilliant final comeuppance for Paul. Should have worn some brown trousers that day, mate. Number 3. The Ruby Snatcher, aka the Ruby and the Rain Saga, aka Series 14. This is the only series in the entire history of the show's run to have an ongoing serialized story throughout the whole run, and while it's a bizarre departure from the norm, it actually worked perfectly, with a great mix of penny dreadful suspense, mystery and espionage, and even a dab of sci-fi. Paul and Barry are looking after a one-of-the-kind ruby for Dan the Van's gran, but when it turns up stolen, the Chuckles attempt to track down the thief by questioning the various house guests of the night it was stolen. But the rabbit hole goes deeper than they ever could have imagined, with twists involving MI7, a weather machine, a mad professor, and includes one of the 2 times that the Chuckles went floating about in the green screen room. I mean, went into space. With a pretty good alien spoof to go along with it.
I saw this film once. It was about this strange furry animal with black ears. Everybody thought it was cute and cuddly. But then suddenly, he started shaking and shaking. And whoosh, this big pink hand burst out of him.
That was Sooty.
Oh.
This was definitely an odd change from form, but it really worked, and it showed that the Chucklevision writers were capable of something that was more complex and intricate than simple pratfalls and whacking each other round the head with ladders, and introduced a few reoccurring characters such as Gran and Mr. Carrington Smythe, pronounced Smith. This also started a brief ongoing tradition where each successive series would have a multi-part story in it. This was then followed up by Magnetic Distraction in the following series, and then the series after that there was The Incredible Shrinking Barry, but I think the first of these was by far the best. A shame though that this didn't lead to a big crossover episode, teaming up with the characters from Basil Brush, the Slammer, and Ka-Ching. Number 2. Waiting for Dan. One of the most basic episodes, but also one of the best, and a great example of the old TV technique known as a bottle episode. The boys arrive at the basement of an old folks' home waiting for Dan the Van in the hopes that he'll offer them a job, and as they wait, they act as the caretakers and show just how many things can go wrong in the utility room of a retirement home, getting crushed by apples, flooding the basement, and making the worst pizza in the world.
Ooh, pizza! 7 out of 10 for presentation, but on the health side, look at all this salad.
With the exception of Domino's pizza, of course. This is a great testament to show how much you can do with so little, with the premise basically being Barry and Paul are in a basement, and yet they were still able to give us 20 minutes of entertainment out of that. And hell, I think they could have given us more. The episode just abruptly ends with the boys having mended everything off screen, with how much of the momentum kept building throughout the episode, with the water flowing out of the phone, the apple crumble mix foaming up throughout the room, the heater not working but still boiling hot. There could have been a lot more to show, but I guess that just goes to show how great an episode it is. But it's still not the best, since why would you have an episode where you barely have anything at your disposal when you can have everything in the world at your disposal? Which is where, in my opinion, the best episode of the series comes in. And the #1 Chucklevision episode is... The Gathering. The episode that has everything you would want from Chucklevision. Grand adventure, multiple locations, multiple performances, Jimmy Patton, and a really basic but hilarious premise. Paul and Barry's cousin has given birth to twins, and they're holding the christening at the hotel that they work at. Since No Slacking's well aware of the pair's capacity for destruction, he decides to make them go out and find all the long-lost cousins across the world under the pretense of them attending the christening, but really he just wants them out of the way for a bit. Not realising, of course, that a chuckle is like a boomerang. The harder you throw it away, the quicker it comes back to you.
Switzerland! Yodelay, yodelay, yodelay! Russia! China!
This episode is probably the most ambitious in the whole show, with Paul and Barry going around to places like Scotland, France, Australia, Italy, Mexico, and everywhere else you can imagine to find their racial stereotype cousins. Though to be fair, it's still not as bad as this. And it never really came off as too hurtful. It actually seemed quite well natured, and it does kind of harken back to their 1930s film inspiration. Though let's just be thankful that they weren't inspired by Al Jolston. I did seriously consider putting the episode Silence is Golden here instead due to its brilliant use of silent comedy, but that episode did get rather repetitive and obnoxious at times, and it kind of loses its charm after one viewing. It was still a great episode, but I personally think that this one is the better exemplification of the show's greatest elements. As I said before, I love it when the boys play alternate versions of themselves, and here we get the motherlode, starting off with the return of the often seen Scottish duo of Dougal and Douglas, the pair's Scottish relatives, and from there we get the pizza-making brothers from Italy and the jailhouse painters from Mexico, and so on and so on. All of which culminates in one of the funniest and creepiest images the show has ever produced. And I thought the Paul and Barry Super Mutants was going to be the scariest thing on this countdown. How come I didn't put that in my top 10 unintentionally scary kid shows? Of course, there were lots of episodes I missed out on this countdown, but with over 200 episodes, 20 isn't even 10% of the whole series. If you have any episodes that you loved but I didn't mention, please put them in the comments below. Of course, now with the Chuckles being permanently separated quite tragically, it's time to remember all the great things that they gave us. And if I'm honest, this episode gave me more nostalgia than any other video I've made for this channel, and that is saying a lot. But may the memories of the Chuckles live on forever. And now I've had enough of this. I'm going on the other side to have a bath. Bye!